This week on Media Delta, he's only a boy named Charlie. A boy named Charlie Brown. Hello and welcome to another episode of Media Delta. We are talking about a franchise that has been around for quite some time. We are dipping our toes into the huge franchise that is the Peanuts franchise. The comic strip that has Charlie Brown and the dog in it. The dog that actually, takes over the comic strip in most actual regions. Like, it's mostly just called Snoopy in a lot of other regions. The one that's about the boy that doesn't do things very well and kind of gets treated like shit by his friends. But, yeah. We are specifically today talking about a film version of it, particularly with the first theatrical film, Peanuts film. That being A Boy Named Charlie Brown, which came out in December 4th, 1969. So this is a pretty old one. This was directed and produced by Bill Melendez and Lee Mendelson, who are responsible for a lot of the Charlie Brown specials, like the holiday stuff. Their names are attributed to a lot of Charlie Brown stuff. So this was the first theatrical release of a Peanuts property. I was not the only one who watched this, so please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Max. Wah, 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 wah.
Hi, I'm Torpid Typus, and I'm here for toxic friendships.
Yeah. So, yeah. This is a movie that I watched a lot as a kid. It's just, I really like Charlie Brown as a kid, so this is just it's a hour and a half long Peanut special, essentially. It's also taken from basically anime versions of various comic strips, kind of tied together with one loose plot, with a bunch of vignettes that kind of don't make sense, but whatever. It's, if you're familiar with pretty much most Charlie Brown stuff, it's pretty much most of the same, at least as an overview. So I guess before we kind of get into any more details, let's just kind of go around and see how do we all enjoy this. So, Axe, what were your thoughts of this?
Well, I mean, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. It's a vignette, a series of vignettes very loosely tied together with an overarching plot, which actually doesn't get revealed until about halfway through the movie, and that's Charlie Brown attempting to win a spelling bee and succeeding at the beginning, which is new for him. Because most of the property, the whole franchise really is about how much Charlie Brown fails at everything. Everything that he loves kind of falls apart, and basically all the people he surrounds himself with some notable exceptions, kind of suck or they're toxic to him, and
Profoundly toxic.
I can relate a lot to a lot of that. But it's kind of interesting because it's a laid back movie. It's a very laid back kind of film, but it's also kind of depressing because you're just watching this kid basically fail at everything, and he's just trying to find a small bit of happiness at a period of time when you're supposed to be happy.
So, it's not just that he fails. There are even things that he's, perfectly normal or average at, but he still gets beat down anyway for not being perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much, especially watching it when you get older, and especially when you have say a generational shift in attitudes on various things. It's interesting looking at this movie now than it would be to say look at it I don't know, even 20 years ago. Because this really, I know Charlie Brown has always been a franchise that has been known for it's it's actually kind of depressing because it's just basically everyone beating down Charlie Brown for not being absolutely perfect. But it's very much I heard someone describe this movie as basically, or I guess the franchise in general as basically the result of this is the idea. This is a perfect example of the boomer mentality, where it's basically, oh, you're not perfect. We're going to beat you down. We're not going to help you with anything. We're just going to beat you down with it.
I mean, like the one time Charlie Brown succeeds is when he wins at his local spelling bee in his school, and for like a very brief glimmering moment, he's happy, and the people around him are happy because he did it. He was good at something. Hooray! But then that moment is fleeting because right away they want to push him into the a national spelling bee, and they want him to go even further, which kind of goes into what Torpid said. Like, okay, he's good at something, but he's not perfect at something because he fails at the national spelling bee. So now they just hate him again.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
my favorite thing while watching it, is especially like on TV, they're only supportive of him when he is succeeding.
Yeah.
They're only happy to see him when he is the best or close to. But the second he fails, they all get fucking pissed at him. Not at
Yeah.
anything else, at him specifically
Which,
for fucking up.
which, by the way, that's kind of the thing that it's something I always glossed over until I didn't realize. Like, this is the National Spelling Bee, the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which is I'm not going to say massive event, but it's a
major
thing
event.
that existed since
And
the 20s. It's
He
a
came in
big event.
second. He came
Second
in second.
in the National Spelling Bee.
Yeah,
This-
that's pretty fucking good.
like I've been in a spelling, like people were like happy with me when I got like second or third in the school spelling bee, like much less the national spelling bee.
But before
Yeah,
he even gets to the national spelling bee, though, the first time he goes to do the spelling bee, everybody just assumes he's gonna fail. Like every time it comes to him, they automatically just are like, "Oh yeah, he can't get this word. He's gonna screw this up," or he ought to know this word because it describes him, where it's like incompetent and insecure were two of the words that he got. That Lucy started shit talking him, going, "Oh, he should know these words." It's like,
yeah.
Jesus.
It's also not just that he got good at it. He got good at it because of the stress placed on him by others, to the point where he was like struggling to sleep and could only ever like hear words and then spell them out.
Yeah,
So like he'd be talking to himself as he's just under all this stress and start spelling out words he says. And he was just like losing it from the stress. And there was only one person like ignoring his dog, because it's Snoopy's a dog.
it's Snoopy.
Dogs are always there for you. But
Yeah.
like there's only one person who supported him through it all, and that was Linus. And the only time Linus turned on him was when Charlie lost his blanket and Linus was having a panic attack.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even then, he didn't turn on him. He was
No,
just
he was just
desperate.
angry. Like,
He was
yeah.
just desperate to find his blanket. Like he didn't take
he-
it out on Charlie Brown. He just kind of,
Yeah,
got loopy.
he was going through he was not in a very good headspace at that moment.
In fact, it's Linus who kind of anchors the entire ordeal of Charlie Brown losing this national event, and Charlie Brown feeling embarrassed and isolated and outcasted. And Linus basically just says to him, "Well, the world didn't end." And I know it sounds kind of callous, but it in a way it reminds him that it's not the end of the world. It's just one incident, and you still did a good job.
Yeah. Well, like
Yeah.
Linus even went to New York with Charlie Brown. He's the only one who went with him.
Yeah. Well, he
And when
only
he
he only went for the blanket initially.
Yeah,
Well, yes, but still, like he was supportive of him the whole way through.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when they come back and Charlie is dejected after everyone treats him like shit, Linus still comes to his door the next day to ask him if he wants to play ball.
yeah,
And then unfortunately delivers the news that the only game Charlie Brown missed is the game that they won,
yeah,
further deepening his depression. But
yeah.
but yeah, Linus is like the one bright person in his life other than Snoopy. Snoopy being a dog, like you said, dogs are loyal. They're gonna be there for you. And
Yeah, I was gonna say he's essentially the comic relief of this,
yeah,
kind of.
but like, despite the movie being, I felt like the movie got a little too laid back at times. It's an hour and a half long, and it's that way because there are a couple of scenes, two in particular that stood out, where Schroeder playing the piano and Snoopy's ice skating dance. went on for way, way too long.
They
We
definitely
we
felt like they were buying time with those.
yeah, we didn't need those sequences to begin with, and they didn't need to be as long as they were. But it definitely felt like they were padding out the runtime with those.
Yeah, it's like even when I was watching this as a kid, the piano segment in general, because that segment does not need to be in the movie at all.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find out what the because it.
So like
I mean,
I'd say it's hard to argue that actually because it is just a series like for the most part there is the entire plot bit which spans like the latter half third of the movie. But like in general it's just a loosely strung series of what are basically animated comic strips.
Yeah. I believe a number of them were lifted directly out of the strip.
Yep,
Yep.
it's listed. Apparently, the majority of the strips that this movie is based off of were from February of 1966. Also, apparently, there was supposed to be an alternative ending where the word that he misspells is not beagle, but maze, M-A-Z-E, like the thing, which he spells as M-A-Y-S, like Willie Mays.
Oh, I
Which
thought it would have been like maize, like the corn.
Which that's actually kind of a thing that I found kind of weird about this. It's like one of those weird technical details that are not in there because it's to help tell a story. The words that they were giving out were really easy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they're like you're also younger kids, but I'm
Well,
spelling much harder words at that age.
well, if I remember correctly, they're in the second grade, and that's where the competency level was for the spelling bee was the second grade.
That probably makes sense.
So that would probably be why it's not more loquacious.
Yes. Um, the one thing I did want to say about because it was bothering me when I watched it because the one thing I say that that scene doesn't need to be there, but actually, that movie is where I first heard the piece, which actually is one of my favorite pieces of classical music. For specifics of what it is Beethoven's Piano Sonata Number 8, the Pathétique, particularly the second movement, which is Adagio Cantabile, I believe.
You sure said some words.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's a great piece. It's a really nice piece, but just the whole sequence just it doesn't need to be there.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
Like there's like weird like gothic like imagery going all over the scene. And just that scene always bugged me as a kid. And then also the hockey scene also was a bit weird. Which, to be fair, that tends actually becomes a recurring segment. I think it is a segment from the comic, with Snoopy basically getting really pissed off at a various sport. There is another. I think it might actually be the second or the movie that came out after this, or no, it wasn't. It's a movie I can't remember when it came out. It might actually come out in the 80s. Bon Voyage, Charlie Brown has a very similar scene. You know what? It had to have been 80s because he's basically trying to be a John McEnroe. So that would definitely have to be 80s. But regardless, that there is a precedent for that kind of scene with Snoopy.
And it hits a number of the standard notes. Charlie Brown's love of flying kites, and the kites going into the tree, and Charlie Brown having a hard time flying the kite to begin with. It hits all of the standard Peanuts tropes in a short period of time.
Yeah.
I mean honestly, like at this point, like with a more modern read, Charlie just reads as someone who's just kind of bullied and deeply depressed.
So that was actually kind of something that I was thinking of after rewatching it. Because I was thinking about because Lord knows there are plenty of other Peanut stuff. There seems to be two or three variations on Peanut stuff. You have what this falls into, which is basically like Charlie Brown, like basically fails at something, like tries to do something and fails at it, which is a good handful of that kind of medium. There's actually the more interesting ones, actually. Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown. Like, actually, all the other movies other than this have a instance of basically Charlie Brown stumbles onto something and basically helps out someone else, which is usually they're a lot less mean about it. And they tend to actually have storylines that are like not just Charlie Brown being bullied by life. Like for example, Snoopy Come Home is a actually very depressing movie about Snoopy, basically the relationship between Snoopy and Charlie Brown. Also, her Snoopy's original owner, which may or may not exist depending upon what Charlie Brown, like whatever. I don't want to say timeline it is, but when they
Charlie
remember
Brown
that
canon.
whenever they remember that Snoopy had either Snoopy was like had a previous owner or not. Um, and then you have stuff like Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, which is basically Charlie Brown actually winning a race for once, and basically being vital at that.
God,
And then you have
spoiler alert.
it's a kids movie, uh, and then Bon Voyage Charlie Brown, which was weird because it like ties into like Charlie Brown's father's service in World War One, which is really weird because they're in like France. And it's like this weird side plot that I barely remember watching that movie. But there are interesting things you can do with it. And it's just that this one, I think the fact that it's like, oh, it's a Peanuts movie, the fact that it's probably the roughest about that particular thing. But yeah.
It's also really well animated. This, like
Yeah.
it's a very I want to say it's very low budget. It looks very low budget, but it's also very smooth for what it is.
So it is so as I mentioned earlier, it's Bill Melendez and Lee Mendelson, who that team is responsible for pretty much all of the holiday specials and a lot of like the really notable Charlie Brown stuff. Another, I do want to, before I forget, I do want to actually point out one thing about this is that the music in this movie was partially done by Vince Guaraldi, who is responsible for the music in, say, A Charlie Brown Christmas, I think a few others. But this was his last, last composition for Peanuts something because he would unfortunately pass away pretty soon, if not before this movie came out. So this is a pretty this was the last Vince Guaraldi contribution to Peanuts. So there is that for it. I just want to point out. But yeah, Bill Melendez, Lee Mendelson are responsible for a lot of the specials, and this feels like I don't even know if bigger budget is really the thing because it's the thing that how Peanuts look like. I don't know if a budget is really necessary. Because Peanuts just kind of has a look for it. Though now that I'm thinking about it, there are a few scenes in which you could tell that the animation could probably be a little bit more higher quality. There is a scene in which a bunch of kids leave school.
And the same kids leave over and over.
And over and over again. You could see them pop up. And it's actually also kind of fascinating to watch this movie on higher definition. Like if you're watching this, because I have a Blu-ray of this, and you can see sometimes the cells in there. Like a lot of stuff that you wouldn't notice unless you're like an animation person or like into it, but you can like really see like the looping backgrounds and all that. Like basically,
I will say the colors are very good though.
Yes. Like that's the thing is like there is like it doesn't need to be big budget, and what they do with what they have, like there's just design choices that I feel work.
Yeah, I mean like you said, Peanuts has a look to it from the comic to the movie, and all the movies basically have the same kind of look and feel to it. And I wouldn't want it to have a big budget because I feel like that would take away from that aesthetic. It's a very unique aesthetic of that kind of fits that whole theme of Charlie Brown. Like Charlie Brown's this individual who's struggling in life, struggling to be somebody, to do something with himself. And so just like that low quality to it seems to fit the rest of that.
That like the thing that I feel about Charlie Brown is that good-looking Charlie Brown does not look good.
Yeah.
Is that it doesn't need to look good. Now, that being said, there are things you can do with the style that really look technically great, like the Peanuts movie that came out like 5 years ago. I haven't actually seen it, so I can't verify with whether or not it's a good movie. But that retains the Peanut style in 3D, and it looks really cool. Um, it's like the thing with like it's just because we recently watched it. Lupin the Third. Um, like Lupin the Third sometimes has a really low budget, but sometimes it doesn't, and it looks really fascinating. Like Lupin the Third, the first that's coming out, like or that is the most recent theatrical release of Lupin the Third thing.
Yeah, kind of can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I've kind of not heard great things about the movie itself, but it looks really cool.
Yeah.
All style, no substance.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately,
That's all I really have to say.
yeah. Torpo.
Man, Charlie's friends fucking suck. They fucking suck so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sucks to have people not support you.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like just going back, like I haven't watched Peanuts in a long time, so like I it's been a while since I had this sort of like look at it, but with like a more modern perspective. It's like, holy shit, Charlie's friends are terrible. Like absolutely awful. And like the relationship with Lucy especially is fucking foul. Oh, God.
She's
Yeah.
probably the worst out of
I
all of
mean,
them.
she absolutely is the worst out of all of them because a lot
Yeah.
of the other ones, like character doesn't show up, or like two characters that don't show up in this show that actually are better friends to Charlie Brown. Peppermint Patty and Marcy do not show up in this at all.
Actually, Peppermint Patty does show up, but very briefly. It's during the scene where Charlie is going on the bus. She's standing there with a sign that says Chuck.
Oh, okay. The one, like, I feel like if Peppermint Patty had a better or a more prominent or like had a role in some things, I feel like her character is kind of she's somewhere between Linus and Lucy, but probably more a little bit like more like leaning more towards Linus in
Like
terms of
she'll hassle him, but it's usually in like good nature.
she's very like she's not rivalish, but she's playful, like competitive with him.
Yeah.
Um, Same with Marcy. Marcy also is a better. It's just that the cast in this particular ones is like the ones that really showcase, which I feel like that's kind of a thing with this one is that it really showcases the more that kind of side of like the Charlie Brown entourage. Because like you barely see Sally in this movie. You barely see like any of the other ones. Like Franklin is not in this movie.
No, the focus is largely on like Charlie and Lucy, and to a lesser extent Linus, and also obviously Snoopy because Snoopy has to be there.
Yeah, it's like most of the non-Linus friends you see are Lucy and Frida, who are the more um like more competitive of them. So yeah, that kind of hurts that particular segment of it. Um, and yeah,
But yeah, like even the toxic friendship aside, it is a pretty chill movie for the most part, just kind of setting the vibe too, which for me is a little bit boring at times, but if you want something just like super low key, then there you go. Uh, that said, yeah, no. Also, I've heard people try to defend the Lucy thing. It's like, oh, Lucy actually like has a crush on Charlie. No, that's not an excuse. That's never an excuse.
Also, no, she doesn't. She has a crush on Schroeder.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Also, like they have toyed with that concept earlier. I don't think they have ever really like in the entire Peanuts franchise, I don't think they have ever tried to push Lucy and Charlie Brown.
No,
Um,
I've heard other people say it though. It's like, no, No,
That's
that's
a
never
t-
an excuse.
Considering the fact that there are other characters who have that, like say for example, Peppermint Patty and Charlie Brown is a common. Uh, I don't. I really don't want to say ship that this show like this franchise does, but
I don't
like
know, because the one I've heard most with Peppermint Patty is Peppermint Patty and Marcy.
that also exists. Also, Marcy and Charlie Brown. There's a lot of. I really don't
Peanut
want to.
shipping.
I really don't want to do peanut shipping, but like if we're gonna like analyze the relationship with Lucy and Charlie Brown, that
It's
I
purely antagonistic. She
No,
has,
she is a bully. She is a bully.
yeah.
Like
yeah
straight up, she is a bully.
That's like
And, like,
that's
there's-
like when you're saying, "Oh, he's just pulling your pigtails because he likes you." Like it's just reinforcing abuse and bullying. It's
that
no.
it is also the thing where it's like we realize like remember like this comic strip came out in the 50s and it's a artifact of the time where that relationship like that was things that like I mean even me growing up heard that kind of like behavior like that justification of behavior like
If somebody
unironically
hurts you, it means that they like you. No.
But
like
actually,
yeah
that does remind me is really quick. Speaking of Fairweather Friends, it was Lucy specifically who really jumped on the Charlie was successful, time to be his manager, and also try to train him and beat into him all of this reading. Like she is the one who really put him in that super stressful spot.
yeah and
And then she got pissed when he fucked up.
yeah
No, she was getting pissed even before he fucked up. Because remember when he first shows up on the TV, he's slumped down. He's just ragged out from all the studying, and she's immediately calling him a blockhead and saying he's falling asleep. Like she's already pissed at him before it even starts.
yeah
She's awful.
yeah this is something that I feel like again this is a problem with this being a relatively early entry in the franchise or at least in terms of animated Charlie Brown stuff because it's something that does get it's never full like it's never where Lucy is always like Charlie Brown's friend or something like that but it's something that gets toned down in a way that's more like not like super toxic like she's always like not I feel like bully is sometimes a bit too hard of a word in like future stuff, but she's always somewhat antagonistic towards him, and like antagonistic towards pretty much everyone.
Yeah, but she's an outright bully in this. Like
Yeah,
even to the point of leading a song about him being a failure.
yeah. Also, her her therapy session, which really shows the that's just a it is a thing of Peanuts in general in the time that it came out. The idea of what therapy was, also, since she is, the therapist is in 5 cents kind of thing, and basically her entire therapy session is just, oh, here's everything that you basically suck at. These very specific things I'm going to call out, which is not a great thing. But then again, kind of starting to wonder where my critique of this particular piece of media is in just early Peanuts. And it's just being a fascination. Also, this isn't so much even Peanuts, it's just the time.
I will say, like, we are focusing largely on like the Lucy stuff and all that. But there's just a bunch of them that are just like not even any real dialogue or anything. It's just Charlie vibing.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these are just super simple little vignettes, like just little bits of just things happening, kids playing. It's, for the most part, super chill. It's just God, the entire like plot of the latter chunk of the movie is just oof.
Yeah.
Like overall, it's just chill little animation. Looks nice. The color work is actually very good in my opinion.
Hmm.
And overall, it's meant to showcase all these strips just in animated form. Just anytime Lucy is on screen, just like flames and the
Uh, one thing that I was looking at the cast, and then one thing I did want to call out that's actually a thing that's very commonly associated with Peanuts. as being one of the major uh having the major use case of the fact that I think it was either a thing that Bill Melendez demanded, or it was a thing that Charles Schultz himself wanted, which was the use of actual children for the voice acting.
Good.
Like, like, of course, it's not award-winning acting, but they sound like kids because there are kids, and they do a good job. The kids, like, there really isn't anything like any like really weird lines or anything. Like it's yeah.
It doesn't sound like a bunch of adults trying to sound like kids, which I always rag on in media because it's always so obvious and it always sounds so awkward and weird. And it's kind of like I think it's Cyberpunk had that thing where it was where the kids were just shrunken down versions of the adults with the adult faces.
Yes.
That's what it's like whenever I hear an adult try to do a kid's voice. It's that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that like I appreciate like Peanut stuff for is that I don't remember like the only media that I can think of that it's adults playing like the kids is during like it's like during productions of You're a Good Man Charlie Brown because it's an actual theatrical play.
Mm.
I will also say like a big thing to say about the kids too is that the line reads weren't really stiff at all, which is something that tends to happen fairly commonly. Like they actually sounded like actually pretty all right.
It sounded like a bunch of kids just being kids. You know.
Yeah.
Sound like Lucy's a fuck.
Some being a bunch of bastards.
Yes.
Just I can't get over how mean this movie gets. Like it's a very mean movie.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a thing that's kind of inherent about the Peanuts franchise as a whole. This one in particular is really bad about it, but it is something that gets toned down in later stuff. That a lot of the times, like sometimes, like usually it's a lot of time, like they have started to make Charlie Brown actually get the upper hand. Like, of course, like the football gag. A really good reversal of that, I think, came out in, I think it was the show. Well, I'm pretty sure it was a comic strip. But at some point, like Charlie Brown, he doesn't kick the football, he kicks Lucy and like breaks her hand. And I just remember that because I always felt that was funny.
No, I mean it's justified. Lucy sucks.
Yeah.
That's actually really quick. A thing that bugged the shit out of me is at the very end of the movie. So this is supposed to be played like back to normal. How nice. Which is basically Lucy's playing with a football for some godforsaken reason, and Charlie sneaks up on her and goes to kick the ball, but she lifts it up and he fucking goes, he slips and falls like always, and it's like normalcy.
Yep.
Welcome back to fail.
It is a problem with a lot of comic strips, is that status quo must be maintained at all cost.
Because the football gag gets done a fair amount of times in the actual comic strip.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is like if there was a recurring gag in the comic strip that like most people like remember, it is either like the Red Baron like Snoopy thing, or it's that football thing. Like that thing is such a metaphor for like the thing is just a pop culture metaphor that keeps on like people bring up is Lucy pulling the football out. Like it's like one of the franchise's like most popular things.
I could have sworn it actually became like a term at one point, pulling the football out.
It is. Like I have heard that used in like clinical not clinical, but like I want to say I've seen it used in like an academic paper before, or like more professional settings of like explaining that they pulled the football out to describe someone basically like baiting someone with something and then just pulling it out to get over him.
God,
Yeah.
it's
Indeed.
great. Because so, folks, for sounding too mean, like there are a lot of issues, but the problem is the other stuff, the lot more like loose stuff, is a lot harder to talk about at length. Like legitimately, it's hard to like really dig into and talk about because it's just kids being kids for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the base. We could talk about the baseball thing, where his Charlie Brown's team always loses at baseball, and then they have the gag where every time the ball gets hit, it gets hit so hard that he flies out of his clothes and he has to put them back on. And then Schroeder, actually, who's playing umpire, comes up and says, "Hey, you're putting your clothes on way too slow. If you keep this up, we're never going to finish this game."
Yeah.
So like they even they acknowledge the absurdity of this particular gag, but treat it as though it's an actual thing happening, and
Yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah, it's like there's also a lot of small details in this movie that are really nice. Like there's a really specific scene that actually is a very it actually it kind of plays like the main like Charlie Brown failure thing in a very loose way. Like Linus is sitting with Charlie Brown on their doorstep after losing the game, and Linus is trying to cheer him up. And basically, Charlie Brown, or like, there's two sticks there. So Charlie Brown like draws a tic tac toe board on in the ground, and they play like they are offhandedly playing a tic tac toe board or like a game of tic tac toe, and Linus just beats him and like he is like and he's doing it like in a way that looks like he's just offhandedly doing it, like he's not even paying attention. And then it gets to the point where it's like he like wins and then confidently like he like unconsciously strikes the thing through, and then Charlie Brown looks at him all pissed, and then he realizes what he does. He's like, oh whoops, which I thought was a nice touch, like just offhandedly just proving Charlie Brown's point.
There's lots of high points, there's lots of low points, and the movie spends a lot of time kind of meandering, but in a way where I think most of the meandering was actually pretty all right. It's just the extended sequences, the piano sequence and the figure skating sequence that I thought weren't very good. But
Yeah,
the other
it's because
ones,
they didn't. Really quick, sorry,
yeah,
but it's because they didn't feel like strips. They didn't feel like the comic strips. They were just there to fill time.
yeah, they're filler. Whereas like the other ones, they kind of there's like a plot, there's like a beginning, middle, and end to each of the vignettes, and they you know they each lent their own air to the film. I guess I want to put it, and it's just a very laid back movie for the most part until you get to the spelling bee.
Yeah. um and again, I feel like a lot of the problems that we're having with this movie can be boiled down to basically it's old. Uh,
Yeah, different times,
Yeah,
different mindsets.
yeah.
because I'm trying to think when did like I'm just kind of thinking of like if we're talking about animated vignettes. I was it, there's another we've watched another movie that's kind of also a case of let's take something that already existed and make it a movie. That's the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie, which was a bunch of Looney Tunes shorts that are tied together with a plot. Um, and it just seems like in that, but the thing was that was 10 years later. Um, like this kind of thing, I'm getting like obviously there have been animated movies before, but this was like the first time that we saw like Peanuts on a big screen. So I guess they tried to make it a little bit more grandiose,
Hmm.
but that's at least that's my take on it. Um,
It's a product of its time.
yeah. Also, I'm trying to take a look to see what specials had come out by this time. Um, like obviously, a Charlie Brown Christmas came out in '65. Um, Charlie Brown's All Stars, which I've never seen, came out in '60. So, Great Pumpkin was '66. You're in Love was in '67. Easier Dog. Like there have been shorts before. So there had been. It looks like there had been about 5 or 6 prior to this existing. Um, and yeah, Also, now that I think about it, when did Franklin become a character?
Yeah, because I don't think Franklin was a character by the time this movie came out.
Is it another thing that I kind of want to do a quick little thing. Like we have been saying that basically a lot of this was basically problems at the time of like when this thing came out. But I do want to point out that Peanuts did actually do. There's a. It's not something that's actually kind of really like people don't really remember this particular part about Peanuts, but it did actually try and push some things a lot. Comic strip did. Oh, Franklin came out in '68. But the fact was, like, putting Franklin in a comic strip in '68 was like revolutionary at the time. Uh, like his father actually, like Franklin's dad was a Vietnam soldier. Like when that was still going on. There's also the character Seven that's not commonly talked about, which was I forgot if it was about something, but Seven in Peanuts, like don't I'm trying to remember who that exactly was. But there was a character named, I believe his name was Seven, or I can't remember if it was like what if it was boy or girl or not. But Seven, that basically or their parents named him that uh, as like some sort of protest of like Social Security or something that he didn't like people. He didn't like people being like numbered something. So it's like, okay, you're gonna name us or like label us as that. I'm just gonna name my kid Seven. Um, and that. Although now that I'm saying this, I'm remembering that screenshot of Charlie Brown Thanksgiving that keeps on going around of Franklin sitting on the on one side of the table all by himself. So maybe that's undercutting my own point. Regardless, um, Peanuts is an interesting comic strip. Um,
You're racist, Charlie Brown.
Strong Christian undertones.
God, there's also
There's
I
there's
mean,
an there's an innocence to the strip and to the movie as well that you kind of pick up on. Like they're all kids, and in spite of some of them being more toxic than others, there's this degree of innocence to it all.
yeah, like that is something that Peanuts has always been like. Peanuts has always felt sincere.
Yeah.
Like it's never felt like they're doing things to like they're not I mean, it's mean, but it's always that mean in that weird sincere way where it's like they're just trying to like do their thing. Um so now I'm just remembering the Peanut special Why Charlie Brown Why, which was mostly about Linus dealing with his friend um being diagnosed with cancer and
Okay.
having to sit or like Linus standing up to a bully because he was making fun of this girl because she didn't have hair because she was dealing with chemotherapy at the time. Which
I don't I don't remember that at all. But continue.
it was like when did that come out? Why Charlie Brown? Why that had to have been like yeah, it was 1990 when that came out. Um, yeah, that was certainly a thing. Um, but yeah,
Should watch that.
I've watched it. It's I mean, I've watched it. It's kind of rough in some spots actually.
Just have some good vibes and then cancer.
I mean, although I will spoil something. The girl pulls through.
Well,
Um,
I would assume so.
the,
It's Peanuts.
yeah, like they will. I think that is the hardest thing they have ever tried to tackle in that show. Um, but yeah. Also, so now they say that Snoopy Come Home is a very depressing movie because basically it is a chain of people very much being sad for various different reasons.
Oh, so it's basically the Brave Little Toaster then.
Kinda,
Because that movie was just everybody crying in every scene.
yeah. Actually, um,
That movie was just sadness, defined. So
like that is basically them sending Snoopy off, having a big sad party about it. Him getting kidnapped at some point by some girl who like treats him like a doll or something like that. and then him like getting to the girl's apartment, who, by the way, had to give up Snoopy because I think it also implies that she got cancer as well, or some sort of illness. And then they reunite, and then oh, whoops, the apartment she lives in doesn't allow dogs.
I'm glad we're talking about a completely different movie.
Yeah,
We have so completely lost the script at this point.
I mean, to be fair though, there's not a whole lot to talk about, and like we've kind of
Maybe there's
discussed.
just not a lot to talk about, and it's okay to end it there. Like,
Yeah,
I don't need to stretch this out like they stretched out their movie.
I'm a big Peanuts fan, so it's like it's one of those things. It's like this franchise is really weird sometimes.
I get that. My point is though that we're talking about this one.
Yeah, I think that's a sign that maybe we should probably move on and rank this.
Yeah. Like, wait, why the fuck are you guys talking about that?
I kind of forgot to. All right.
I was just going along with the flow because that's the way I am.
fine. I just felt the need to rein it back in.
Point out that right, we're talking about something completely different.
Yeah.
All right.
Lolo doesn't usually talk this much during these things, so I really just want to let him go.
Yeah. Me talking in my own show.
It's a nice little movie for half of it, and then the other half is a depressing reminder of what toxic friendships are like.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right, so we're gonna judge this on our normal 1 to 21 ratio, or like ranking, with 1 being absolute mastercraft, can't get any better, 21 being absolute garbage, don't even bother watching it. Axe, where would you give this?
This is a dead center. I mean, it's a serviceable movie. It's fun to watch it, but it doesn't do anything, extraordinary, or doesn't really elevate the medium. And it certainly doesn't do enough with the property, I think.
All right. Torpo.
I would honestly say I'd probably put it around the same level as Little Nemo.
Yeah, which is 11. So, yeah.
It's like looking at all this stuff. It's like, actually, yeah, no, I enjoyed it about as much as I'd Little Nemo, which, like, it wasn't bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Even if I was kind of bored for a chunk of it, but that's just me being me. That's my own taste. But in general, I thought it was okay.
Yeah. I was also thinking right dead center in the kind of right around Little Nemo. Little Nemo, which actually is kind of it's a very similar movie in a particular way. That being, it is a movie that things just happen in it. There's not a whole lot of, there's a plot to it, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Though Little Nemo has a lot less, I would say, like, the story in Little Nemo was not as interesting as this. It was not as, like, trying to think of a way, because I mean the story is like not bad, but it's not as, like, nothing to bring to the table, I guess. Whereas they're also both based on comic strips, also of a very older time, that although Little Nemo is not as problematic as they actually stripped a lot of the problematic stuff out of Little Nemo, the movie, thankfully.
I'm just remembering it now. Why? Why did you remind me?
Let's not talk about Flip again. But yes, I think that 11's also a good spot for that. It is a perfectly acceptable movie.
Good to put on in the background if you're doing chores.
Yes, which there is something to be said about that. What? I'm trying to remember what episode is this. 65 or is this 66? I think this is.
That was last week's.
Well, last week's was Mega Man, but we didn't put that on the board.
65 was Mega Man.
65 was Mega Man. Okay, so this is 66.
Yeah, I was gonna say 64 is Secret Mama. So.
Oh, sorry, I have to check something real quick because I just realized something.
Kicking my ass, crushing my nuts.
667. Good. RoboCop's gonna be 69.
Yes.
Remember that time RoboCop shot that dude in the dick?
You know exactly that's going to be a thumbnail for that episode. The greatest picture on the internet.
Beautiful. Fucking beautiful.
God, I hate that. That's like the one tweet that I've ever made that has gone close to viral. It's just me seeing, hey, everyone, look at this perfect image. It's a theatrical release. This was a kids movie. It's so I've had this. It's the thing that.
Yes.
So for tone, I know we have market driven, and that's mostly done for games, but this is a movie that's based on a comic strip.
It is, but I would also say it's whimsical.
Yeah, I'd say whimsical. All right, so let's see. Let's see. What do we want to call? Oh, I'm going to put a yikes in here just because there is
Toxic.
there is some friendship things that are not called out that I feel probably would in nowadays. I feel like if someone,
I don't know. I feel like fucking Charlie Brown would still get grandfathered in with that bullshit.
Yeah, no, I'd say in this day and age, there are people who be toxic and not even realize that they're being toxic. So,
yeah. All right, let's see. Let's see. Is there any things we want to call out in music, charm, cinematography, storytelling, action, and art?
oh, music. I would say music and art are both a thumbs up.
Yeah, I would also
Yeah.
agree.
The Peanuts theme itself, on its own, is iconic.
Yep, Linus and Lucy. Also, the music in general is just really good. The main theme tends to get stuck in my head whenever I think of it. I forgot who the actual author of it is, but yeah. Anything else we want to call out for like cinematography? I wouldn't really call out anything. I wouldn't say it's bad. Storytelling, I also would not say anything other. Action doesn't count. Charm? Do you want to give it a thumbs up for charm?
I mean, it's got the Peanuts charm. It's got that Peanuts feel to it. I don't know if you would call it charming, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it in your hands. What do you think?
I'll leave it blank.
Okay.
So I feel like this one particularly is kind of more basic about it.
You're wrong, but okay.
All right. Anything to call out for yay or nay?
Okay, so would you say milk or boy this was from the XDs?
I was thinking, boy, this was from the XDs.
Yeah. That and it's too damn long. It's too long.
Yeah, I don't feel like this really justifies the hour and a half.
No.
Like, I would say maybe like an hour, maybe? Like maybe an hour and like 15. But I feel like an hour and a half is a bit too long.
It's funny because I was driving home from getting my cat's medication. I was like, all right, I got to sit down and watch the movie before we do the recording. So it's like, oh, it's Peanuts. It's probably like, what, half an hour, 45 minutes?
No.
And like, oh, no, it's an hour and a half. Great.
Well, the problem is, it's like the vignettes smashed with the actual plot line. And like, there's no flow from one into the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they were trying it out to see how well it would work. Like it feels more like an experimental film than like an actual honest to goodness effort, if that makes sense.
Yes, that is actually a really good way of describing it. They want to see if they can do a Charlie Brown special the length of a movie, which they did. And also, without this, you wouldn't have had the other ones, which do actually like the other Charlie Brown movies are not vignettes; they are full on stories. Yeah. I should say they are vignettes, but they actually tie together much better than this does.
The most famous, I think, would be It's Christmas, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, but would you say everyone is an idiot?
I would not say that everyone is an idiot because I feel like
Linus
Charlie is fucking.
He's trying his best.
He is. Charlie is a nice kid put in a bad situation, and Linus is trying his best to help.
Yeah, that's the thing I would say. It's just that also they're children. They're not perfect.
Yeah. No, I still say Charlie is a good person. He's like a good kid in a bad situation.
Yeah, like that is like a prevailing theme throughout a lot of the later Charlie Brown stuff. Like straight up, I can't remember if it's a special or not, but there is one that is, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the theatrical play is "You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown." Like that is a recurring theme throughout a bunch of the later Charlie Brown stuff. So yeah, I think just length and boy was the Xyz, I think will be good for this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it. So yep, there is our first look at Charlie Brown stuff. I'm kind of thinking, I'm kind of curious what the next Charlie Brown thing I would do because, I mean, since we did Snoopy concert for the SNES, really anything Charlie Brown is open. You really don't have to do any of these in like chronological order. I really don't want to watch Snoopy Come Home again because that is actually a depressing movie.
Too bad
mean-
we gotta.
I mean, I would like to do the Christmas one because it's well known
yes.
and it's really good. That whole scene at the end with Linus. I mean,
Also, the one thing I will say, doing Charlie Brown Christmas would be interesting. The one other thing I would say with doing that is that I feel like we should do a double feature because there is another Charlie Brown Christmas special that I actually like better that it doesn't get enough love, which is It's Christmas Time, Charlie Brown. And that one actually I kind of like. But yeah, that was I want to say mid 80s Charlie Brown special. But it's one that doesn't get the love that Charlie Brown Christmas does, which I mean, granted, that thing was huge when it came out. Yeah, that's just me, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe we'll just do all the Christmas or all the holiday ones together because they're short enough. They are like 30, like what Charlie Brown Christmas is what 30 minutes long.
think so.
Charlie Brown Christmas.
I can find out.
Let's see. It is 25 minutes long.
Wow. Yeah. Could
So we
easily do a double feature.
I bet you we could do an entire episode of all the holiday specials. Because that'll be like like watching 7 episodes or something. But yeah, nonetheless, that is it for A Boy Named Charlie Brown. It is a film that is pretty average, that might have aged a little bit, but yeah, it's a thing that it's good to put in the background or something.
Good for vibing.
So yeah, with that, before we close out, Ax, is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. If you ever want to check it out, it's a great resource for people who have autism who want to live a more independent life.
All right, Torbo.
God, I feel so inferior every time you do that. It's so nice.
It's exactly why I do it. It's not to actually help people with autism, but just to spite you.
Just the style on my
What do you got to say, Torpid?
What's your Twitch channel, Torpo?
Gonna promote yourself again, Torpid?
Is on Twitter.
Actually, you might want to speak up so people can actually understand you.
Twitch.tv/Torpotypist and @Torpotypist on Twitter. And I would fucking like to plug the hole in my ego.
Yes. All right. So next week we are finishing our look at Mega Man the TV series season 1. So we got 6 episodes of that to take a look at. Those will be definitely interesting. I'm sure of it. They're not going to totally be kind of met, but I don't know. I actually haven't watched them in a while, so who knows? They might actually be interesting, might not, but we'll see. So with that, thank you all for listening and have a good time, whatever time it is.
Bye.
If you would like to look at the full list of rankings for yourself, please visit r3.ldp.life and go to the Media Delta List tab. If you would like to watch Media Delta's sister show, Retro Rank Rhapsody, you can either watch at youtube.ldp.life or by tuning into twitch.tv/LoadedPuzzlo at 7:30 p.m. on Fridays, 2:30 p.m. on Saturdays, and 1 p.m. on Sundays. All those times are from the Eastern US time zone. If you would like to discuss this episode with the community, you can do so by joining our Discord server, which you can do so by going to discord.ldp.life. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you tune in for our next episode.